Hi, so in this video I just want to give you a quick overview of how to join two AirMax products, the Ubiquiti AirMax products together to create a single point-to-point connection. There are a number of ways to do it, and I'm not going to be doing all the finessing of all the different options. I'm going to give you the basics to actually get this running. So I'm going to be doing this on two nano beams. But this principle will happen the same with a power beam, will happen the same with nano stations. The first thing you're going to need to do is know how to get your network card onto the same IP range as the device. You may have to just look around if you're not sure how to do that. There will be some other videos around on the internet that should hopefully help you change your IP address on your network card. By default, the nano beams or the nano stations have their connection on 192.168.1.20. The certificate isn't trusted. That's okay, that's normal. You wouldn't buy a certificate for every single device, so this is a safe device to do. So in my web browser, which I'm using Chrome, I have an option to hit advanced and proceed to the site. So this is the first time we're going to log in, and by default UBNT is the username and UBNT is the password. I'm in Australia, so I'm just setting that for Australia. I'm going to accept the terms and conditions, and I'm going to ask the device to log in. So a point-to-point is literally going to be creating a long Ethernet cable, if you like, over the airwaves. And the principle that we need to do this is we need to create one end as an access point and the other end as a station. We will upgrade this firmware as well, which is what I'm going to do first. So my first step in here is going to click onto the cogs on the left-hand menu here, go up to System and check now. And always, some things don't always go to plan, so it's going to, at the moment, moan that it can't find that, which is fine. And that is one reason that I should be able to answer for you. And in case you get the same issue as well, you've just gone to 192.168.1.20. It's set as a static IP address. It hasn't got a gateway on your network, so it doesn't have to get out on the internet. So let's make some simple changes first that's going to make this easier. We're just going to set this to dhcp, which means that it's going to pick up an IP address from your router. It needs to be this way anyway, because you want this to seamlessly operate with inside your network. So we're just going to save that. And we're going to leave the radio enabled. The first time you've been in here, it's going to want you to change the password. So the current password we know was UBNT. This one I'm just going to change the password for, but it's up to you what you set that password to be. All right, I'm not going to save that. Should allow us to actually now save the changes. Now you've put this back onto your network. If you'd made changes to your network card, you'd need to go back and put your network card back onto dhcp. The issue that you have once you've put your card onto dhcp is that you may not know what IP address it has now assigned it. I know the last few that I've been doing of these have slowly moved themselves up my IP range. So I'm just going to start from where I last left off, which is .75. And I can log back in. If you don't know what the IP address is going to be, you're going to need to log into your router. And in the DHCP table, it should tell you what the IP has been set to. So now you can log in with your new password that you've set. All right, and because this is now on the network, what we can actually do is tell it to go and grab the firmware, because it can now see your router and it can see out to the internet. We can accept the terms and conditions, and we can let this go through once it's done that to tell it to go and update. So I'm just going to pause this video very slightly because it takes about 3 minutes for this to happen, and there's probably no point in you watching that. So I'll come back in just a moment once it's upgraded. Okay, so the device has updated itself and rebooted, so we're back to the login screen. All right, and we can now just make a few last changes to this. So I'm going to click on the cog here. So like I said, the things that we need to do on here are fairly simple. One end needs to be set as an access point and one end needs to be set as a station. So I'm going to set this one because it's the primary one that I'm setting up. I'm going to set this up as the access point. I like to give these a different SSID and lock them down. You can just let it sit as it is and essentially it will work, but this is probably a neater way of setting it up. I've got a number of these I'm setting for a client, so I've just set them up in pairs. I set up security here for this. So I've put in a pre-shared key so that nobody else can join this point-to-point connection. It's just going to give you some extra level of protection of what's going to be going on. Like I said, there's plenty of other settings in here you can come back and work on. This is not my main driver for this. This is to show you how to get the two ends going. So on the network, we've set that as dhcp. If there's ever a problem, it's going to come back onto 1.10. There's nothing really extra for us in this instance to configure in advance, so I've left that off. And I don't normally leave the SSH server on. I will come back in due course and enable this for the management system because these chat home for me. But in your scenario, you don't need to worry about that. Then on system, I'm going to turn the management radio off so nobody can mess with this. I'm going to turn the client server on so that it sends the right date. And I'm just going to choose the time zone, which for me is plus 10. So those are the main things that I need to set. So if we come back to wireless, we've got it set as an access point. We've set up the SSID and we've given it a pre-shared key that we need to remember for the other end. We've put it onto DHCP and we've set what we need to have set in here. What you may decide in here is to name it if you've got a number of these. So this is my pair 3 number 1, so I know that I can find it later on if I'm looking. So I'm just going to save those settings, which are now going to apply. And that is the first unit done. Now at the point we turn this over to using DHCP and its IP address changed, what I actually went and did was then plug in our second access point, because that's going to come back on our default IP address again of 1.2.0, 1.20. And so we're going to let that screen load up and we're just going to repeat the process at this end. So again, username is UBNT, password is UBNT, Australia. In my instance, accept the terms and conditions. You'll see our other device now has returned back to its setting here. Oops. Let's see if we can do this. All right, so that's sitting there waiting. And it's telling us we never disabled the management. Oh, it's temporarily enabled, but that's okay. So don't worry about that. So this is now sitting, so I'm going to leave that sitting on the dashboard as we start to configure this one up. So the first instance that we wanted to do, we could do a whole load of these in one go. We can again on the cog. This is, we know to set as a station, so that's okay. This needs to match what we had before, which was pair 3. And we can update the security on here to be the same as we had at the other end, if I can remember. Right. Now I'm not going to go a little bit further because some of this is worthwhile us just doing the factory update. So we're just going to remember we put that back onto DHCP and save the changes. It's going to ask us to change the password again. All right, so we can do that. Not now again, save the changes. So like before, this is going to apply the changes. It's going to pick up a new IP address. So once it's picked up the new IP address, which it will in a moment, we'll obviously go to its new IP up here. And then I will go and do the firmware upgrade. And then I will actually show you the last little bit, and you'll see both these devices come online and start talking to each other. So this will now, hopefully, we'll see if it's okay. There we go. So we're now waiting for the device. So I know that it will have picked up the next IP address that might have been allocated. So obviously, you know, as long as you know what the IP addresses are, you could set them as static ones if you want to. That's not a problem. That's just for you want to be able to manage these later on in the whole process. Then this is how you can get back to them and configure them up. Once they're working, you're probably not going to have to do much to them. So I'm just going to come back to you in a minute when this is finished upgrading, and we're going to finish off the video. Okay, so the firmware is updated. I'm just going to log in with the new password that I set. You can change the username as well. So we can, let's just go back to system. Here, you can change the username down here if you want to. So like we said, I'm just going to turn the management radio off. I'm going to oh dear me. I'm going to relabel this so that I know what the device is. Happy for AirView to be running. I'm going to turn the client on. I'm going to set it into the time zone that I need. So we're just going to apply those changes because sometimes it does like to apply the changes and then kick you out. So we're just going to let it decide what it wants to do on that. There we go. It's been kicked me out. There we go. Alright, so then we're just going to work back through the screens once that's logged us in. Clients on, which is fine. Services, we're going to take the SSH server off because I don't want that to be running. It should be good. Network we were happy with. That did everything that it needed to. So all we need to do is fix out the wireless, which we've got. It's a station. We're given its web key. So hopefully, based on all of those, if we come to here, we now actually can see the two devices connected to each other. These are literally only about a meter apart, and they're pointing in completely the wrong direction to each other. So they're actually picking each other already up, and you're getting a capacity there of, you know, 300 megasecond. But those two units are now linked together. If you've got an Ethernet cable coming in from one, Ethernet cable coming out to the other, both ends would see each other. So you've got a switch connected to each other. You've now created a pure Ethernet cable over the air, a point-to-point connection. So hopefully that's been useful. If we go back onto the primary one that we set up, we can actually again see that that's set up and working. So that's how you create a point-to-point. It works in AirMax, so it works on the Nano Station, NanoBeam, PowerBeam, all of those products in the same way. Fairly straightforward and simple. Hopefully that's been useful.